Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Hitbox on the Gaming Grounds Network. I'm here today with Derp,
Well, hello there.
and we're going to focus some more on some CSGO as well as a little bit of Call of Duty since it's coming out within a couple days. I guess before we start, though, Derp, let's just give them a network update really quick. We're now on all the major platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. So that's cool. Like usual, follow us on Twitter at Gaming Grounds and at Guzzy GGN. And what's yours, Derp?
At Derp GGN.
Awesome. We're coming out with more social media as well as Reddit and whatnot. I kind of want to hammer that home, and we would appreciate if you can get your friends involved and just share the podcast for us. That'd be awesome. We appreciate it. But I guess let's just jump right into it, right? So the last time we did this, we kind of talked a little bit about our experience with CSGO, our favorite players and teams, and it was right at the start of ESL One New York. And I know, like, over this time frame, we were talking about what do we want to do with this podcast. Maybe it's a every week, maybe it's a bi-weekly event. So we're just going to find that out over time. So sorry if you're expecting an episode and it's now 2 weeks after. But here we are. We're doing it. I think for the time being, we're going to do bi-weekly just because it allows for more time to pass and more news to come out.
Exactly. More events to go on and us to kind of figure out what's going on with these events and let the matches kind of play through, so we're not like kind of doing a thing in between the matches of one major event or so.
Exactly. And we do have a couple of guest interviews coming into the frame here, hopefully soon. Maybe next week I think I can get one for FPS like games, so that'd be really cool. Well, let's just jump right into ESL New York. Those of you who don't know, Evil Geniuses won. They played their first tournament under that organization and won. I think at the time we recorded the last episode, I said it was a rumor that NRG was going to go to Evil Genius. Turns out they did, and they actually won the very first tournament they played. I personally think they were a front runner based off of how they played at the major. I didn't think they were going to be able to defeat Liquid or Astralis, but they destroyed Astralis in the grand final, which was actually very cool. And shout out to my boy Tarek, he's cool. Honestly, though, like ESL One New York, it was interesting. I don't want to say there's a handing over the torch, but I think we have a pretty decent idea of a couple of the top 5 teams in the world that produce consistently. Obviously, Astralis, they had their era last year, and it's still honestly continuing. It's just not where they used to be. Then you have Liquid, who was dominating for most of this year and came up short at the major. But I think Evil Genius is one of those teams that you can add into the fray here and say, is it going to be a consistent top 5 team? And it's interesting because 2 of these teams are North American teams, and for the longest time in Counter-Strike, North American teams really struggled compared to European Counter-Strike. And being able to see this North American Counter-Strike actually take over the scene is actually very, I think it's good for the game. I think it's great for North America, but I think it kind of changes the pace up a little bit in the current scene with the game already reaching its peak, and now its peak viewers have definitely gone down. But I think it's a good thing to see. Again, not a handing off of the torch, but a change in the meta per se, I guess. Instead of playing European style to win tournaments, now you have to play North American style and all that stuff. So I think it's a good change in the scene to be able to have something like that.
Absolutely. Like you were saying, like it's kind of spicing up the meta, so to say. I know for the longest time, like you're saying, it's EU kind of play style, and North America was kind of just a joke. Like everybody would just say, haha, play like an NA. But I mean, obviously it was just kidding. It's just banter, whatever. But yeah, North American teams weren't really the top dogs to say for a long while. There's all EU teams up in the top 5, maybe even top 10. But right now, I believe it's Australis, Liquid, and Evil Genius as the top 3. So it's really cool to see NA in 2 out of the 3 of top 3.
Right, and just to round out the top 5, it's Fnatic and Vitality, and we'll touch on Fnatic in a little bit with DreamHack Masters Malmo, but I think it's amazing for NACS to be where it is, because yeah, you're right, it is the meme, and it's everything that us North American players do. We have different play styles where different kind of mentalities, different kind of strategies, and preparations, I think is the word I was looking for there. But being able to have two of the top three teams that are North America is huge. And personally, all of these three teams, they can totally play each other, and it's an extreme fight to the death. I know Evil Genius blew Astralis out of the water in the grand final, but these three teams are teams that have really kind of found their chemistry, and they can only build upon that chemistry. Like they've found their ultimate chemistry, and now they're working to make that ultimate chemistry stronger. That I think they're going to be teams that are just sticking around for a while. And it's really awesome to see someone other. It's slightly biased, as I'm an Evil Genius fan, but slightly biased in this terms of it's nice to see someone not Astralis or Liquid win. Like I said, Astralis has been dominating the last 2 years. They've won three of the last three majors. They've pretty much destroyed all of last year. They won the Intel Grand Slam first. And then this year, it's really just been Liquid, aside from the last, 2 months now. Everything about this year was Liquid, and winning all these tournaments, winning the Grand Slam, falling short in the major, you hear Liquid's name around. Now they're actually kind of struggling a bit. So I think it's good to see someone other than Astralis mainly, and then Liquid not in the grand finals, or if they're in the grand finals, that another team is stepping up and able to give them a run for their money.
Absolutely, it's really cool. Like you were saying, it's kind of like if any of these teams versus each other, it's kind of up in the air and who would win because they're all so good. And so like you were saying, EG beat out Australis, even though Australis is number 1 and EG's number 3. The way that they play is different, and they have to kind of change their play style depending on who they're playing. I mean, that's obvious, just pro scene, everyone does that. But the fact that all three of them are so good, and it's kind of like it's not like a clear victory from the start of the match for anybody. It can always turn, it can always change the tides, it can always come back from pretty much nowhere and just take it. It's insane to see that NA and EU are kind of becoming like that now.
Right, exactly. And to see these teams do it consistently, especially the NA teams, is something that we really haven't seen, at least in our time with CSGO these last few years. We really haven't seen a dominating NA team, and if we have, it was only dominating in NA. It wasn't dominating worldwide. So to be able to see something like this is very interesting, even with the game that's slowly, slowing down a lot, I would say. But I guess if you want, we can jump right into DreamHack Masters Malmo. That was a very interesting tournament. So as soon as ESL One New York ended, Astralis and Evil Genius had to jump on a plane over to Malmo, and a lot of people, I guess, like from what I was seeing, and just kind of a gut opinion there was it's probably going to be another Astralis Evil Genius or Astralis Liquid. Like we were just saying, like there's these top teams in these tournaments here. They're expected to be in the grand final. And it turns out that was not what the case was. Fnatic was the one that ended up winning. They won in their home country, which is huge. Fnatic's been a team that hasn't been heard about in the last, I would say, 2 years maybe. They've had like one win each year. They've gone through a lot of roster changes. They still have pretty much their main course from their major day. When they won that major, they still have JW and Crims. So like a name like Fnatic is as large as the brand as it is, to not have them relevant for the last few years, it kind of I personally think it's kind of hurt the CS scene a little bit. But now that they're back, I guess. Did they take down some big names in the tournament? Sure. But it also could have been the momentum they were getting from the crowd being in their home country. It could have been, everybody was just peaking at the right time. To give them number 4 in the world, I don't know if I agree with that based off of one tournament. But when I kind of look at this list, I don't know if I can say that there's a solid top 10 in the world based off of how everybody's been playing. Again, Astralis, Liquid, and Evil Genius have been so dominant, so consistent that it's kind of difficult to actually give a solid top 10. So I don't necessarily agree with the rank 4 for Fnatic in the world. Vitality, I think, is a little better than Fnatic. And yeah, I know Fnatic beat Vitality in the grand final, but I kind of look at individual skill in that regard, and I think Vitality is ranked a little higher than Fnatic. But again, props to Fnatic. That was a huge win. That's what they really needed. They just got Golden back as their in-game leader, and they had kicked him from the team. He ended up going to Cloud9 for a bit. So it's looking like it's on the upswing for Fnatic, given that you have 2 legends of the game with JW and Crims on there. I'm actually very curious to see what happens with this lineup and see how far they can go with the next large events. Um, and MIBR currently is on the upswing too with their new roster change. So I think there's going to be a lot of new, I don't want to, not new completely, but challengers coming into the fray now that will give Astralis, Liquid, and Evil Genius a run for their money. It's just they have to find that chemistry from these roster changes in order to get there.
Definitely, like you were saying, like with the roster change, looking at Fnatic's roster now and thinking back to like when they were, I think they were like number 1 or number 2, like high up there. They were one of like the best. Seeing JW and Crim still on there, really cool. Seeing the other names that it's just it's kind of weird to see Fnatic and see those names that aren't like the old school classic set that they had. It's really weird, but I mean, they're doing something right. They must be doing something right if they just took that home. But like you were saying, number 4, that might be a little high. I agree with you on that one. Who else is on there? I believe Avengar.
Vitality. Yeah.
Vitality's number 5. Avengar's number 6. I mean, Avengar, we talked about that last time. We kind of touched
Right.
on it. New up and coming coming squad, kind of doing their thing. Really nice. It's weird to see Navi really far down as well as Nip and G2. Like I'm thinking back to like the old school days, like when we just kind of got into the pro scene, started thinking about it and all that. It's really weird just to see how different the teams rank now. It's kind of funny.
Right. And when we were coming into the scene, Fnatic was that large team. I think Navi was one of the larger teams. Astralis was actually TSM. MIBR was SK Gaming and Luminosity, actually. G2 wasn't around because Titan was around. Envy was a huge name. And going down this list like we just did, like, yeah, you're right, Nip is number 11, and that's up 2 spots from the last time. Forrest is the only person on the team that's still a legend. Nip's been known to have their legends and have such a strong Swedish kind of CS style, and now it's really just Forrest on that team. So I'm hoping that Nip can turn it around. Forrest deserves a lot. But then you look at teams like Ents. They made the major finals, not this past major, but the major before, and lost to Astralis. But I'm pretty sure they gave Astralis a huge run for their money. And they make one change. They get rid of Alexi and they bring in Sunny. So now they don't really have an in-game leader. They've dropped down to number 8 in the world. And people were really thinking Ents was going to be that new power, giving Astralis a run for their money, being a constant top 3 in the world. They're clearly struggling right now when that's very typical of a roster change. You just have to find that chemistry with each other. But it's really coming down to, I guess, did they make the right change? Should they have actually found an in-game leader instead of just bringing in Sunny? But Sunny, he's a really great player. It's just, does he have the in-game leader experience, or does someone else on the team have an in-game leader experience? Ents was that one name that, they came out and it was bang, here's Ents, and then they fell off and now they're back. So to see someone like Ents drop so far, it doesn't really surprise me, honestly. I would love to see them stay up there just because of their story and some of the players. I mean, you got Bot Alu or God Alu, however you want to look at it, but it's really kind of interesting to see how fluctuating some of these teams are. That it's really momentum based, but then the consistent ones are really because the team is built properly. They have the infrastructure they need with the resources and coaches and mentality preps and things like that. Like Astralis, clearly they have these therapists, they have physical trainers and stuff like that. That's why they're being number 1 constant. And it's probably not so much. That organization probably doesn't have the resources or the money to put into their players as much as Astralis does, even though Astralis is built from the ground up from these players. It's interesting to see how each esports organization varies and how they differ and what resources they actually put into their players and their teams. And that really does reflect on how those teams actually perform.
Absolutely. Like you were saying earlier, like how they picked up someone else. They kind of have to, any team really. If you're gonna drop someone or roster change, you have to think about what you need in the team and not just drop someone and pick someone else up because they're good. Like if you need an IGL, in-game leader, then you need to get an IGL. Like you can't just drop an IGL and then be like, okay, well he's good, so we're gonna pick that guy up. Then you're not gonna have an IGL that's experienced, that knows what he's talking about, that kind of works well with the team and has that chemistry that you're talking about. Obviously, not a lot of teams are going to have chemistry like right off the bat, just clicks. But there are some out there that you get a new teammate and hey, click, instant chemistry. They do well. They go off on people, and honestly, I think Avangard might be them. Like they kind of just came out of nowhere. I don't know if like it's a brand new team or not, but they work well with each other. They're doing their thing. They kind of just came out of nowhere and said, "Hey, we're here to play."
So they're not a brand new team. They came about when I at least recognized them back at E-League Boston Major. Shout out Cloud9 for winning. So that's when they started coming on the radar. They didn't qualify. They missed it by one game. They've made a couple roster changes since then, but they're really clicking. They're up and coming players for the most part. James especially. So they're really players that are new to the scene, but have an extra flair to them, and they're not necessarily washed up or getting tired of the game. And like you said, roster changes. I do kind of want to point out Navi did pick up Guardian again. So that's kind of large. That frees up Simple to be able to be a rifler instead of an opper. And he's obviously the best player in the world. And going back to the in-game leader, Kerrigan left FaZe. I mean, it was more like FaZe benched him. I don't think he was the issue. I think you look at FaZe and let's be honest. Let me look at this list right now. FaZe is number 19 in the world. Olaf Meister, Nico, Rain, Coldzera, and Brokey. Before Kerrigan left, I think you look at the players and it's like you said, you can't just take the best players from a team and put them together. It doesn't work that way. And that's what MIBR try to do. But someone like an Olaf and a Nico, they shouldn't necessarily be on the number 19 team in the world. They should be a lot higher. They should be a consistent top 5 team given their skill level and their track record. But yeah, for Mousesports to pick up Kerrigan, that was huge. That was a insane pickup. He's not necessarily the best rifler or the best player, but his experience, his knowledge of the game is what's really going to drive Mousesports, and that's why they're number 7 in the world. And they have 2, maybe 3 actually, players that are really up and coming. So they're honestly on their way up. I wouldn't be surprised to see Mousesports in the top 5 at the end of this year.
Ooh, that's quite a statement right there. Damn. Okay.
I mean, just give them time. You have Kerrigan, you have Chris J. Chris J isn't the best in-game leader, but his knowledge is also very beneficial to that team. And he's been benched a couple times on that team and came back. So there's a reason why Chris J is still there. I think what happens is Fnatic falls out of the top 5, but stays top 10. I think you see Mousesports move up to the top 5. I guess I'll just give my overall prediction. I think you see Astralis number 1, Evil Genius number 2, Liquid number 3, Vitality number 4, Mousesports number 5 at the end of this year.
Wow. Okay. If we're going to do predictions, I'm going to say that I think Liquid's going to take Astralis. So I'm going to say Liquid. I'm calling Astralis is going to have a bad year. Evil Genius is going to take over. So number 2. Then Astralis is going to be number 3. I would love to see a Vengar, but I don't think they're number 4. I'd say Vitality number 4, Vanguard number 5. So Liquid, Evil Genius, Australis, Vitality, Avangar.
That's awesome, yeah.
That would be amazing to see.
Yeah, it would be. Vitality just made a roster change for Shox. So NBK had stepped down and Shox has now moved in, which means G2 lost Shox and in came, I think it's Nexa, maybe? And let me just throw this out to you. Kenny S. He's on the number 2 French team in the world. Much of his career, he was on Titan, which was the number 2 French team in the world, second to Envy. He's finding himself back on that, and he hasn't been the Kenny S he was when Envy won the major with him. So it's interesting to see how the times have changed. Vitality's not as large of a esports brand as G2 is. So G2 probably definitely has the resources and the money there to be able to fund everything the players need. But here's Kenny S. He's on a team. Let me see if you know these names: Jax, Hunter, Amanek, and Nexa.
I don't think I've heard of one of them.
Exactly. So I've heard of Amanek because he played for Misfits when they joined the scene really quickly. But now Kenny S is on an international team, is because they have 2 international players now, so it's not really a French team. I think he's the next to leave G2, personally, just because everybody else around him has left. And I think you're going to see Vitality being the superior French team for the long time. It's going to be interesting to see how Shox plays on Vitality. I know he played with a lot of these guys on Titan and Envy, but I think having someone like a Kenny S who hasn't been playing well these last few years, but still has large potential compared to other teams, sitting on the number 2 French team, sitting on a team that's not even number 10 in the world, and now has an international team. I think that says a lot about his player, his characteristics. But I'd also like to see him on a better team. I think he'd be a good fit for FaZe, honestly. Not trying to put the best players on a team, but I think he might be that kind of opper that FaZe actually needs. And that might be able to turn FaZe around. It's just I'm kind of looking at FaZe right now with Nico and coldzera, who've been some of the best players in the world and in Counter-Strike history. But I'm looking, I don't really see an opper in that regard. So I personally would be perfectly fine if Kenny S went to FaZe.
Well, I mean, we have seen coldzera do some opping, so he can fill that spot in, but I mean, not as well as possibly Kenny. Kenny doesn't seem like the same Kenny he used to be. He used to just, if you faced Kenny and Kenny had an op, you were dead. That was it. Period. No story. Like he used to run the opping game. I mean, he might just be getting old. He might just be getting tired of the game. He might try to be changing his playstyle. Who knows? But he's definitely not the same Kenny. It would
We
be
were
great.
lucky that we experienced him in his prime, though. Like I guess I would call it his prime because he hasn't been the same Kenny. We were lucky to experience that.
Absolutely. Like the two main oppers were Kenny S and Guardian, and that's when we were like kind of big into it and all that. And that was really cool to see because especially if they first each other, oh, that was a fun time to watch. Who would outsnipe who would peek who first, who would get the hold, like everything was crazy. But him going to FaZe, I could see that, but I don't know who they would replace.
Personally, I feel like Brokey would be gone. Maybe Rain even. Rain hasn't been playing as well as he should be, in my opinion. But I don't know. I think if you let a name like Olafmeister go, I think that would hurt the team. I mean, Olaf hasn't been performing as well either, and he's gone through some surgeries in the recent years. But you have to build around Nico and coldzera if you're FaZe. And Brokey, I think, is this new talent that they're giving a shot. I think that's been the issue with FaZe is they've been giving a shot to some people, not having a legit in-game leader, and that's hurting them because there's no structure. And Guardian even said that when he left FaZe to go back to Navi, that this last year in FaZe was a complete waste. So I think that shines a little light into it. And there are also rumors of FaZe leaving the CS:GO scene. I personally don't see that happening, but I can see an overhaul in the roster coming probably within the next 6 months.
I could see that too. I mean, that would be. I didn't even hear about the rumor that FaZe might leave the CS:GO scene. I didn't even hear about that, so that's news to me. That'd be kind of weird to see FaZe not participating in CS:GO anymore. I mean, that they've been here the whole time, so it'd definitely be weird. But I could definitely see kind of a roster overhaul, like you were saying. Take out a couple people, move some around, see if they can get that chemistry going. And if they do give a new person a shot, then I mean, hopefully they work out well. But it hasn't really been the same in the past.
Right. So do you know that Optic left the scene?
I knew Optic did, yes.
Okay. So I personally think FaZe should get out of the scene and keep those Call of Duty teams to Call of Duty, but that's just me.
That's true. I mean, when you say FaZe, people think of Call of Duty right away.
Right. Like you look at all these other names and it's like, all right, well, they probably have a Call of Duty team, but it's not like a Call of Duty giant or whatever. FaZe and Optic were created by Call of Duty, and here you got some of these teams that were created by CS:GO or created by Dota or whatever it is. I mean, FaZe is probably losing money having their CS:GO team be this unproductive, considering they just paid out coldzera's buyout and everything, and Nico is one of the highest paid players. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if FaZe does leave the scene in 6 months and these players end up staying together and signing under a different organization. But they really do need to step their game up.
Yeah, they gotta do something. They definitely gotta change something around.
Yeah, for real.
If FaZe does go out of the scene, I don't see all of the players sticking together. I think maybe Nico and Cold Zara will, but they might drop Rain, Brokey, and Olaf, I believe. That's
Right. I really feel
hypothetical.
like Brokey is going to be the first to go just because of his experience that he doesn't have. But I also see Nico and Cold Zero staying together, like you said. Rain would probably be my first guess to leave. Unless, Fnatic like really come back or Nip really needs some help. I don't see Olaf going back to a Swedish team. I see him staying in international squad. But I mean, one thing I did forget to say is Flusha is back on Fnatic too. I mean, having a Fnatic reunite team type thing where it's Flusha, JW, Crims, and Olaf, that wouldn't be bad. But I don't think Olaf would actually do that. I also can't see him going to Nip. So maybe even some of these players might retire if FaZe disbands.
That's true. I mean, Olaf would probably be the first to retire out of all of them if they do disband.
Right.
But that'd be really cool to see like a Fnatic almost anniversary, everybody come back and say what's up kind of deal.
Right. And I'm actually kind of low-key hoping that would happen with, some Cloud9 players. At least Automatic, Tarek, and Stewie. I might throw Rush in there.
Yo, Shroud, come back out of retirement, please. Thanks.
And there you go. But I'm hoping for an NA one like that under a extremely good esports organization. That would be really cool. And maybe that's what the scene comes to in a couple years, which honestly is perfectly fine. If that's how they have to take down Astralis from #1 in the world every time, that's what they do.
Just keep on biting at them. That's it.
Right, exactly. So I guess what we'll do now is get over into the Call of Duty realm and kind of just talk about what we are really excited for with Call of Duty and I know we've talked about it in Town Hall, but what we actually want to see Call of Duty move towards a little bit, what we don't necessarily like about the game. But it is coming out, I think, within 9 days. So we'll start with your overall opinion of the game, and we'll go from there.
All right. Like you said, we did talk about this in Town Hall, but we'll just touch back onto it. So my overall opinion is very, very mixed. At the beginning, as soon as I logged on, there was bugs after bugs, which crashed my not my computer, but it crashed my game multiple times. I had no idea what it was, so I downloaded the newest drivers. It still crashed. I changed some settings, still crashed. I did this, crashed. Did that, crashed. Very, very fidgety, kind of bad way to start, so to say. But after I got that fixed, after downloading everything, I changed some settings, then rebooted my computer, and it worked, which is a little weird, but understandable. Getting into the gameplay, it does not, to me, it does not feel like Call of Duty, like pure Call of Duty Modern Warfare that I used to know and love. This kind of feels like a mix of all the first-person shooter games out there at the moment. So it's kind of like a Siege, Call of Duty, Battlefield mix-up, mash-up, thrown into Call of Duty Modern Warfare name. It's a little weird, but I mean, I guess it's Call of Duty? Question mark.
Right, now that's understandable. I had the same things. Let me just take a quick detour back to CSGO. I just read this report from DK on Twitter, so shout out to him. Godsend's looking to come back into the CS scene. It's very interesting because they exited a couple months ago, and it was unsure what they were going to do, but they might be coming back into the scene, which is pretty cool.
That'd be interesting to see,
right.
like, what their roster would be.
Right, exactly. They're targeting the Japaleno. I don't even know, a team I've never heard of roster. But yeah, so getting to COD, I'm very much like you now. I didn't have the bug crashes, and yes, it was a beta. And I know we played with our friend Jolly a lot, so that was fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of Modern Warfare 2. Big fan of that whole gameplay and the guns and whatnot. I think this is going to be one of the better CODs in recent years. I wasn't a fan of the Black Ops series. I wasn't a fan of all the futuristic stuff. So I really do think this one might be enough to keep my attention for hopefully like 6 months. It's going to be. I honestly think it's going to be hard to compete with WoW Classic, to be honest with you, with time.
Absolutely.
And there are rumors of like League of Legends MMO coming out, which I would totally play.
That'd be cool.
I'm gonna get you to play that if it comes out. So really, like, I thought the overall gameplay was nice. The maps aren't what they used to be, if you remember Modern Warfare 2, there were a lot of larger maps that were more spread out, less obstacles in between. Um, to me, I guess maybe it's a changing of the guard and different people developing the game, even though it's the same company. But my biggest dislike of the game, I guess, were the guns. I think playing through it, right? So if we look back at Modern Warfare 2, just because that's probably the best Call of Duty of all time, in my opinion, you had the SCAR, the ACR, the UMP-45, the Intervention, the M4, the M16 wasn't bad either. I think you look at those guns and pretty much any gun you were using, even if it was the Vector Akimbo or the G18 Akimbos, it was a pretty fair battle when you're one-on-one with somebody, unless like they obviously had an intervention and hit you once. It was a pretty fair gunfight to have with someone. I think with this new Call of Duty, I think there's really only a handful of guns that really kind of stand out in the game. They have maybe too much power. Maybe the other guns don't have enough power. We were really only using the same two guns every time, and we were max level. So like, how is that going to affect the rest of the game? It's probably going to affect it negatively until they do some updates to buff guns and nerf guns. And I get it was a beta, but I'm actually kind of worried about that because I don't want to necessarily have to keep using the same gun for every single level or have to get to level 30 to unlock that gun and then be able to use it. I think that kind of defeats the purpose of unlocking things. In Modern Warfare 2, my most cherished moments were completing those challenges and getting the camos and whatnot that I feel like, and I try to do that with every gun. I feel like that's going to be kind of taken away here to use other guns because it's going to be such an unfair advantage with some guns out there. And I know each map has its own benefits for guns. Some might be more of a running gun with an SMG, and others might be more of a long range, so you use snipers or whatever. But I kind of want to see them develop these guns a little bit more and buff ones that should be buffed and nerf ones that are extremely overpowered.
Yeah, like you were saying about the like the skins, pretty much. I really am curious on how they're going to do that because I remember after school we would come home, everybody would hop on Xbox because shout out Xbox better than PS4 or any PS. But you'd hop on the game and you would grind out whatever achievement you needed for whatever camouflage or skin, whatever you want to call it, whatever you wanted at the time. That red tiger, oh, that blue tiger, oh, man, I miss those skins. I really hope they do bring those back in like a remastered version, but I don't know how they're going to do it. If it's going to be like a pay for skin kind of thing, like everyone's kind of hopping on right now, that would be pretty lame. But I really don't see Call of Duty doing that. Knock on wood. I would really love to see them kind of do the challenge thing that they had. Like, I think it was get X amount of headshots for this camo, and then X amount of headshots for this camo, and et cetera, et cetera. That'd be really cool to see that come back in a remastered version.
Right, and I really do think that this Call of Duty has the potential to actually bring back a lot of the fan base. I think it's won over a lot of the streamers that kind of faded away from Call of Duty. It's just a matter of them doing it the right way and not necessarily going with the trends of the esports world, which is obviously battle royale right now. I think getting back to the roots of Call of Duty, because I think we can all agree that the prime of Call of Duty was somewhere between Call of Duty 4 and Modern Warfare 3. I think that's where the roots of Call of Duty need to get back to. Are games like those. Yeah, there was World at War and Black Ops 1 that were a lot. They were based on the past rather than the present and the future. But those were the cleanest gameplays. Those were the most smooth type of gameplays that Call of Duty's ever produced. That I think getting back to those roots is what's going to win over a lot of the old Call of Duty players. Again, comes down to the age and the demographics of the people playing. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of younger kids and a different generation that are playing it now. So they kind of have to keep up with that with all the other games coming out. I get that, but at the same time, there's a lot more of us in the older generation that really miss that old Call of Duty style, and that's what they're trying to bring back in this Modern Warfare is this old style play of Call of Duty while keeping it somewhat modern as well. And I think they're on the right track. I think they need to get rid a little bit of that siege type feel. I'm okay a little bit with the Battlefield. I know you're not a fan of the editing guns in the game, and I personally am not either. I think that should stay in Battlefield. But the siege feel of running around and being able to lean and whatnot, like I think that's unique to Siege. I know Battlefield has it too, but that's really like a huge Siege selling point that Call of Duty, like you never could do that, and you could do these 360 no scopes in Call of Duty, and now you really can, and it's more difficult, and they've kind of really, they just need to find that balance between the two and see where it goes from there.
Absolutely. Like you were saying, World at War. Shout out to World at War. That was my favorite Call of Duty. Just want to put that one out there. But about the leans and all that kind of gameplay and the feel of it, it seems like they're not kind of sticking to the Call of Duty roots. They're just kind of hopping on what's popular at the moment, which kind of hurts. It's not the Call of Duty way. I mean, that's weird to say Call of Duty way, because what is the Call of Duty way? But it's just not Call of Duty, man. It feels clunky. Feels not clunky, but it just feels weird.
Right, exactly. But it'll be great when it comes out. We can actually play it again. It honestly was fun. Probably because we were playing classic, and being able to have a shooter game again does feel nice. So I'm excited for it. It's just going to be interesting to see what they've changed since the beta. Hopefully, no lag issues. Hopefully, no bugs and having you crash so you can actually play.
True.
But it's kind of an exciting time with Call of Duty being able to go back somewhat to their roots and produce such a highly anticipated game, because this game's been anticipated for a few years now, especially with the Modern Warfare 2 remaster. So I still hope they do that, but it's been highly anticipated in regards to the esports industry.
That's true. I know a lot of streamers were kind of having fun, kind of going back with that nostalgic trip. But no, there was like a lot of issues with the streamers, but some streamers a little bit of issues, some streamers no issues, kind of to each their own. But it was cool just seeing everybody have fun with the nostalgic and kind of going back to their roots almost.
Right, exactly. So I guess that might sum up what we're doing here. Do you have anything else you want to say?
Hi Stewie, if you're watching. Hey, what's
Oh
up?
boy,
Shout out Young Stu.
funny, funny, funny. All right, well, yes, I guess that's it for us this week. Again, this is Hitbox. We're probably going to do a bi-weekly podcast on this. We appreciate any feedback, any comments, any questions you want us to answer. Go ahead and drop that at our Twitters. Again, I'm Guzzy GGN.
And I'm Derp GGN.
Go ahead and hit us up there if you want us to talk about certain topics. Again, this is an FPS, a first-person shooter podcast. If you have any suggestions or anything, please let us know. We'll gladly go ahead and answer your questions or address your concerns. We are on 7 platforms. We're on Anchor, we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and Radio Public. Please share us with your friends. We want to grow as a unit, and incorporate you guys in here as well, and get a community involved in this whole thing. Listen to our old episodes. Again, we have multiple different podcasts inside of this network. So we have Town Hall Tuesdays. Morgs and I actually did a industry update episode where we were talking about the esports industry in general, and we're still waiting on Andrew and Waxy and Mindless to do their podcast, which we don't know if it's actually coming out or not.
Eventually.
But we're hoping it's relatively soon, because we want to keep that going as well. We want to have multiple different platforms or episodes for you guys to listen to that provide different content, different perspectives with different people. But with that, I guess thank you guys for listening, and follow us on Twitter again, and leave some comments. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.